and you can see the slides. Okay, there we go. That's better. All right. Hello, everyone. It's good to have you with us. As Caroline mentioned, the title of today's webinar is 3 Tips to Thrive as a First-Time Millennial Manager. And we're grateful that you took the time out of your day to be with us. And I'm going to share my screen now with you so that you can see the title. There we go. And here we go. Perfect. All right. So let me back up here. Hold on one second. We'll start right here. Perfect. All right. So with this introduction, thanks for being with us, and we'll get going. My name is Mala Graywall. I'm the CEO and founder of Talent Catalyst, and I really love the opportunity to facilitate these webinars. Often in my role, sometimes we find that we're busy and we're pressed for time and all these things, but the value that we find that it provides our clients make them very, very worthwhile to me. So thank you for joining me here and our team at Talent Catalyst today. And who we are at Talent Catalyst, I'll just show you this slide. Let's see here. Hold on. Sorry about this, folks. Hold on. We're just in a different file for some reason was pulled up. This is going to make it a lot better. All right, here we go. That's what I was looking for. So if you were curious about whether you're on the right webinar or not, you are, if the title of it is 3 Tips to Thrive as a First-Time Millennial Manager. That is what we are going to discuss today. And we are Talent Catalysts. So we're millennial experts. We study millennials and we study iGen, which are the generation just after millennials. So millennial, I'm sure there's a lot of you on the line with us today, which is what we want. Anyone who's 21 to 36 years old is considered a millennial. And iGen, otherwise known as Gen Z, is anyone who is younger than 21 years old right now. And they don't have a cutoff date for that yet, but anyone 21 and under is technically a member of iGen. And at Talent Catalyst, we're a high-end leadership development firm, and we focus on making work work. And that comes from the fact that we hear a lot of folks, especially in the younger generation, saying, I don't love what I do every day. Like, it's fine. And so we're on a mission to make work fine, fabulous, not fine. And so for the younger workforce and those who lead the younger workforce. And this is a list of folks that are interested in talking about this. You know, this subject matter is really relevant across industry, whether it's a government client, whether it's a university, whether it's an accounting firm, whether it's a tech firm, lots of tech firms, lots of startups, lots of hospitality groups, you name it. This is a very relevant conversation that folks are having. And so hopefully you are in the right spot right now. This webinar is for you if you are a millennial or if you are a new manager, either one of those. This webinar is also for you if you manage millennials. So you may not be a millennial and find yourself managing millennials. You may be a millennial and find yourself managing millennials. So either side of the coin works for this webinar. And this is also for you if you want to lead a high-performing team that thrives Monday through Friday and thrives Saturday and Sunday, but really are out there to thrive versus survive work, which is what a lot of our clients call us with. And lastly, this webinar is for you if you're willing to implement the strategies that you'll learn today to have conversations that at the end of the day really build connection on your teams. They build what we call these trusted relationships with your teams. And we'll get into that a little bit later in the webinar. All right, our promise to you is this. It's quite simple, and the webinar follows this structure. 3 things. We're going to teach you a proven step-by-step strategy so that you can do one of or all of these 3 things. Number 1, motivate your individual team members by using data, really learning what motivates the individuals on your team and being accurate about that. Number 2, we'll teach you how to build team norms, what we call team norms, and show you the power that a structure can have on a team. And last but not least, we'll talk about having effective conversations, specifically coaching conversations. So whether that's around performance or career development or promoting within or hiring or whatever it is, we'll teach you how to have those conversations confidently. Heads up, there's nothing for sale on this webinar, but we do have a very cool gift for you, which we're excited to talk about a little bit later on. And we thank you for registering. Thank you for being on it, because we get that it's time out of your day. So if you stick with us, we'll tell you more about this gift. So we're going to start the webinar today with a question. And it may be a question you've asked yourself, and it may not be. The question is very straightforward. It's simple. And the question is, what impact does a manager have on our ability to survive versus thrive at work? And I want you to think about your career that you're currently in, the job you're currently in, the team you're leading, you name it. You can go to the past if you want. And I want you'll see a chat box here. It's a GoToWebinar feature. And I want you to go ahead and type in your answers into the chat box. I'll give you about a minute to reflect on this, but go ahead and type your answers into the chat box. What impact does a manager have on our ability to survive versus thrive at work? On your ability, on my ability. Okay, so we'll see some typing going on. Just type away into your chat box. And Caroline, if you see some typing, let me know. Okay. All right, we're not seeing, it might be a feature on our end, but give this question some thought regardless, whether you're typing or not. What impact does a manager have on our ability to survive versus thrive at work? And we host this webinar in a live format, keynote presentations across the country. And traditional answers that we get are, some people will say, geez, like we were in San Francisco on Tuesday, and some of the responses that folks said were, my manager is everything. Like if I work well with my manager, I stay. And if I don't work well with my manager, I leave. Some folks said that their manager really is responsible for building the culture of the team, and that's something that's significant in how they experience work and survive it or thrive it. Some responses we've heard are that managers really kind of dictate the terms of how the team's going to work. Managers, and that impacts their ability to survive or thrive. Other people say that managers really are the communication vehicle, right, between the senior leadership and the company as a whole and their team. And so managers that have communicated really clearly and well with the vision of the company or the morale, that makes a big, big difference. But bottom line, there's a general consensus amongst the folks that we talk to and our clients that say a manager is everything in my ability to thrive at work versus survive at work. And I think you know what that means on this webinar, right? There's a big distinction between surviving something you have to do, something that's duty and obligatory, and then thriving, something that's genuine and authentic, right? So the research backs the general consensus that we get. What we found is that people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. This is not new learning. This is an incredibly old finding, and it still holds true today in our rapidly dynamic, complex, ever-changing workforce. This still holds true. I'm going to show you some data from a study called Don't Bank on It, and this was taken from the financial services industry, and we found that combined with Gallup's research on millennials, this data holds through across industries. So we know that people don't quit jobs, they quit managers, and only 21% strongly agree of those surveyed agree that their performance is managed in a way that motivates them to do outstanding work. Only 21%. Second piece of data, the most widely cited reasons underlining turnover intentions all had to do with people's direct manager. This is significant, as you can imagine. People don't quit jobs, they quit managers. And so this is why we feel so passionately about helping you folks on the line really start to understand what you can do, like the simple things you can do to improve your ability and your competency as managers. So with that said, I'll ask you another question here. How many of you as managers find yourself waiting for a team member to eventually get it? Like, I hope they eventually understand what I'm saying, or the light bulb will go off, it'll click, and they'll all start to get it, right? And if you are resonating with this question, you'll resonate with this comment. You know, how many of you have been sitting there and going, well, I've talked to them, they kind of get it, but yeah, they still don't get it, right? Like, how many of you have found yourself in that position? We understand. The problem is they just don't seem to get what you get, right? Like, you get it, it's clear to you, but it's not clear to them, and you've tried everything, literally everything. What do you do in this kind of situation, right? And what we find when we find ourselves in this situation, we find ourselves in what we call the expectation gap, right? This whole getting it notion is about you have an expectation about what's supposed to happen when and how it's supposed to happen. And they have an expectation of what's supposed to happen and by when. And when expectations are met, they magically get it. And when our expectation is unmet, they don't get it. And that makes for a very frustrating experience, and it kicks us right over to survival at work. So I think this will resonate with you folks on the webinar, right? You've got our friend Steve Carell here, world's best boss, of course, and he has an expectation about what his direct report should be doing, how they should be doing it, when they should be doing it, and what they should do at work. And then you have our friend Jim over here making paper airplanes. He has an expectation about how work should go for him, how it should go for the company, what his role should be on the team, what he expects out of this experience at work or on this team. Also, what he expects about working with said manager, right? And so when that expectation isn't met, we find ourselves surviving. And so the workshop or the webinar today is designed to help you learn what you can do, simple things you can do to start closing this gap. Because whether it's small or big, the gap still has an impact on our ability to lead and manage, which has a direct ability on the numbers. So this leads to this question, why does it matter? Like if you're getting away with, if you're doing pretty well, like why does this matter so much? Or if kind of what you're doing works to a certain degree, why does it matter to improve it or change it? And we'll tell you why. Number one is it's an expensive problem. The expectation gap, that being wide, is a really expensive problem because it results in turnover. And so the numbers that you're seeing are turnover costs, all the way from an entry-level employee when they leave to a high-level employee, the cost it takes to replace them. So on the far end of this spectrum, you see that it costs up to 400% of a high-level employee's annual salary to replace them. And on the entry-level side, about 50% or half of an annual salary of an entry-level employee to replace people. It's a really expensive problem to have, and we're starting to see that with the younger workforce specifically. So the average turnover, just to give you a heads up, of a millennial is 18 months in any organization, right? So turnover is an expectation for sure, but how fast is it happening? Second reason why this matters is that millennials are the leaders of the future workforce. So we're millennials at Talent Catalyst. Those of you on the webinar, if you're millennials, you are the future. We are the future of the workforce. So how's it going? How's it looking for us? There are 83 million millennials in the United States. There's 79 million baby boomers, which are traditionally your 50 and 60-year-olds. And then there are 39 million Gen Xers in the workforce, which traditionally are your 40-year-olds, 40 up to early 50s. So it's a pretty obvious gap here that we're seeing on our screen. Baby boomers are retiring. Up to 7,000 retire a day in the United States. That's 7,000 birthday parties. And when they retire, there just aren't enough Gen Xers to fill the slots. So millennials are moving into management positions younger than any other generation in the history of the workforce. So it's not rare or uncommon to see a 27-year-old managing a 35-year-old, or a 35-year-old managing a 54-year-old, or a 42-year-old managing a 36-year-old. These are all really, really normal things to see. And so the breaking news here is this. It's your job as managers to motivate your team to be excited about what you're excited about. And you can't expect others to be motivated by the same things that motivate you. And traditionally, that's what we do. Like when we're looking at what excites us, and whatever excites us should excite or motivate or engage our team members. And that is not necessarily the case at all. So with that said, speaking of motivation, does being a manager feel like something you have to do or something you want to do? Right? Just think about that. On your average Monday or your average Wednesday, does walking in to be with your team and manage and lead, is it something you have to do or something you want to do? Now, when we ask this in a workshop, usually I'll ask, okay, have to, and I don't know, a third of the room will raise their hands, and then I'll ask want to, and a third of the room will raise their hands, and then I'll raise both hands and say, how many of you feel like it's both, that it's on a spectrum? And that's what the majority of the room usually feels, that it's kind of in between. It depends on the circumstance, depends on the project. And what we found is we recognize this range of relatedness in terms of being a manager. Sometimes it feels all the way over here on the left, I can't even deal with this person, or I've told them 4 times, or I've told the team this and they're still not here on time, or I've given feedback and they just don't seem to be hearing it, all these things, right? So on the far left, you find obligation, you find duty, you find responsibility. On the far right, the thrivival, we call that I can't wait, right? And you find genuine desire, right? Authentic desire to connect, to lead, to manage. I want to. And on the far left is I have to. So the question we're asking on the webinar, what our clients call about, is how can we be more on the thriving side of this scale more of the time, knowing that, you know what, it may not all be I can't wait all the time. That's fairly unrealistic. But can it be the little guy, the glasses, who's curious, or the smiley face? Can we be over there? And second, if we can we control it? Right? Or are we at the effect of things that happen, like a project deadline moves or senior leadership changes their agenda, et cetera, et cetera. Caroline, just to mention, we're getting some feedback on the line. So if you could look into that, that would be fantastic. Thank you. So thriving and surviving, this is the game. And here's the important part for managers. If we don't know where our team members are, like each individual when they start a project, or when they're midstream through an assignment, if we don't know where they are in relationship to that project on this scale, they don't have ears to hear us. They don't have ears to hear our guidance. They don't have heart to hear what we're saying. No, because we don't know where they're baselining. We don't know where they are. And so how can we get clear on where they are on this scale before something begins? And then we can speak to them from where they are versus where we assume they are. And those often are 2 very different places. Sometimes they're close, but often they're not. Okay, so with that said, how can I thrive versus survive in managing my team? So we're gonna give you 3 tips for your thrivival. 3 tips that will help you thrive versus survive this experience, okay? So here we go. Tip number 1 is to focus on their motivators. Focus on their motivators, all right? And here's what we mean by this.
Yeah, I gotta think about it. I just have to see.
Okay, here we go. So I'm gonna tell a story about Caroline here. And this is Caroline is one of our business partners here at Talent Catalyst, and she was in the financial services industry for about 12 to 13 years. And her most recent role was as an HR global business partner at Citibank. And she was in her role about 18 months, and she found herself deep into survival mode. So on that spectrum, she was all the way over to the left going, hashtag, I can't even, like I can't do it. So one of the reasons why is because she had a really challenging manager. And so she had to survive that every day. She didn't feel like she had leadership opportunities. She didn't feel like she had learning opportunities. And she was really in a bind. And so the problem was that her manager felt the same way. She felt like she was surviving in her relationship with Caroline because they were really, really different. And there was just communication gaps and communication barriers. So with that said, and sorry, I keep hearing feedback on this. So if you could just mute yourself, that would be fabulous. Thank you. So both parties, they are not winning, right? So what Citibank's leadership did is they said, okay, we're going to bring on a new manager, and we're going to hire this manager specifically to help develop Caroline. We're going to help the manager who develop the necessary skills and the competencies that Caroline needs to grow into her next role. Caroline was a part of a rotational program, which is a very expensive program to run at any one of these banks, right? And so she was on a 2-year track, and they want to see these 2-year track people succeed. It's really, really important that they advance because it's an expensive program to go through. They hired this new manager, and folks, guess what? The manager was sitting in London. And Caroline found out that her new manager was sitting in London. All she was looking for was real connection and a chance to grow a team, be on a team. And her new manager is in London. So Caroline was immediately disheartened. The second thing she found out was that her new manager was expecting, which Caroline was very excited about, but knew that she'd only have about 7 months with this manager before she would need to leave. So with that said, Caroline was very focused on getting the most out of this experience with her new manager and really giving it a shot. So what she helped her manager do was understand what motivated her. So Caroline had run an assessment at Citibank through their learning and development group called What Motivates Me. And its assessment runs through the Culture Works, a company that developed this assessment. And we use this assessment with our clients heavily at Talent Catalyst. So Caroline showed her this assessment and said, listen, I want to be engaged and I want to make this partnership work. I know that you're in London and I want to let you know what really engages me at work. And it was actually inside and outside of work. And so you can see here Caroline's top 5 motivators, her strong motivators. One was friendship. One is service. One is challenge. One is problem solving. And the other, excuse me, is excitement. I'm going to read that on the screen. And
I stayed at her house last night. I'm over there.
So what the manager did is the following. She decided to leverage the data. So she took her own assessment, which was powerful because Caroline had never had a manager really look into her data herself. So she was always guessing. And that's the point of this tip is there a way to not guess what engages people? Can we really know what motivates people? And the answer is yes. So the manager took Caroline's results, highlighted her top motivators, and helped leverage them to take Caroline's career to the next level. And she also together laid out a plan to get specific experiences so that she could use her top motivators to shine. So an example of this, when they communicated, they screen shared. Now, the manager in London wasn't used to doing this originally. She didn't see the big reason why, but Caroline was really insistent that to feel connected, she wanted to screen share, especially when it was really detailed work that they were going to look at. So it took about 6 weeks, and finally this manager said, fine, we'll screen share. And as she was looking at the motivation data, she went, oh, obviously this is important because her number 1 motivator was friendship. And it's hard to connect. She wanted to know the person's face. She wanted to know kind of their body language and what they were like. And that was a big influencer, really helped close their communication gap. The third thing this manager did was review her results to match their commonalities and their differences. And what they found is they had a lot in common and they had a lot of differences. And so they started to look at, like out of these differences, what are complementary? What can really help sync us together? And how can we leverage that to build an even stronger team? And this had a significant impact on the remote working relationship. And it actually does in live working relationships too, where you're actually together. So when you talk to Caroline about working with this manager, long story short, her situation on that emoticon effect spectrum went from all the way from survive, I can't even, to I can't wait to work with this person. I'm liking my job. I'm really liking the comp. She was responsible for comp season on the global team, the global risk team, and she looked forward to it. That can be a pretty mundane activity, but this manager really showed her how strategic of a role it could be. So when you ask Caroline, what was the impact of working with somebody like this? She says, she was the best manager I ever had. She really understood from the beginning what I wanted to do in my career and aligned objectives to make that happen for me. I continue to measure everyone against her. And this is because this woman really took time to get to know her. And I think if you're going to take away a tip, that's so critical. Like, how well do you know your people? And how much assuming are you doing versus like fact checking are you doing? And if that sounds intimidating at all, we can make it very, very simple by just helping you get some data, and we can introduce you to assessments and all that good stuff. But it's absolutely feasible. This is actually an example of one of our clients, Wedding Wire. They're a wedding software company. Yes, that is a thing in DC. And this is one of their sales teams. And they are just trying to build tighter and tighter sales teams to increase the performance. And it's already very, very good. But they just thought, the more we can know the members of our team and really get data on what motivates our team, then we will be more successful in sales. And that is proving to be the case. They continue with anyone who's onboarded to use this assessment to really identify what engages somebody. Made a huge difference. So our tip for number 1 is our Thrive tip to move you from survival to thriveval is to, instead of operating so much on assumptions, try to look for data. Try to get some detailed answers to what really makes a difference for somebody inside and outside of the office. You're going to see that there are major parallels to what engages somebody at work and what engages somebody in their life. So dig, right? Find out and dig. All right. Tip number 2 for your thriveval is to create unity up front. Create it up front. And we'll tell you what we mean by that. A lot of times we try to kind of create unity as an ongoing process, which it is, but what can we do from a structure perspective to unite a team initially? So, does anyone know what happened on October 11th, 1975, and who this cast of characters is? We always get fun answers here. So take a look at this picture. Anyone know who this is? If any of you are up on your comedy research, this is the original cast of Saturday Night Live. 1975, gentleman named Lorne Michaels started Saturday Night Live, 37-year-old director, creator at the time. And he's really known, this team, and it's a team case study. This team is known for having unity that's been unparalleled since the show's beginning. And what Lorne Michaels did, it wasn't rocket science, right? He just went, I'm going to hire people I already know. I'm going to hire comedians that I already know, and I'm going to make a go for this. And they were piloting this new form of comedy, really, or this new structure for comedy and televising it. And so he hired people from all across the board, Canada, Chicago, LA. They didn't know each other from Adam. They had no idea who each other were. So he wasn't looking at profiles or team assessments or anything. No, he just said, I'm going to find out who I know and who I think is really good at their job. And so these folks came together. They all moved to New York City. Does anyone know what New York City was like in 1975? Pretty dangerous place to be, pretty seedy place to be. And they were all in a seedy neighborhood too, near Hell's Kitchen. And they all came together, and they didn't know anybody else but themselves. And the team, they found themselves bonding very intensely because everyone was on the same page about how the group worked, and everyone could speak freely. Like, everyone had a voice to do this. So Lorne Michaels said, here's what we're building. Here's the show we're building. You're all coming together, and we need to create a show, a unified show. And he had a very clear vision on what he wanted to do, what he wanted the audience to experience, what he wanted the writers to experience, and what he wanted this cast to experience. And what's interesting when you study kind of his decision-making process here, he didn't go out and say, oh, I've got to find the right kind of personalities that fit together, which is kind of contrary to team dynamics and team development research. What he did is he just said, no, I just need to make sure everybody knows what their role is, what their responsibility is, how they're going to work together, kind of the bylaws, or what we call at Talent Catalyst, team norms. I'm going to set those up day one so that everybody's really clear. And there was risk for it not being clear in New York because he didn't want any of these folks to get injured. He didn't want them to have dissentments with one another because it was such an expensive proposition. So when you read, Malcolm Gladwell writes a lot about this experience, and he said, everyone knew everyone, and everyone was always in everyone else's business. And the fact goes a long way toward explaining the extraordinary chemistry among the show's cast. And then Chevy Chase has this to say on it. He says, well, we were all 21 or 22 years old. We didn't have any money or any clue what we were doing. So we spent all our time trying to make each other laugh, because that's what we were hired to do. We ate every meal together, went to the same bars every night. We were terrified that if we separated, one of us might get lost and never be heard of again. So when you think of this from your perspective as a manager, no, you don't need to eat every meal together. That'd be kind of creepy, right? You don't need to go to bars every night together. You don't need to do that. What you do need to know is, what are our expectations on the team, right? What are we doing? What are our team norms? What can we expect from one another? What are kind of like the unwritten rules, and write them and make them public and talk about them. And that's what Lorne Michaels did, because he didn't know what he was doing. And that's the beauty of innovation, right? He really didn't know. He just hired some comedians and hoped it worked, but he was really clear up front because there was risk for him, financial risk, and New York is a really dangerous place to be. So here's our top 5 things. We think these are bulletproof. We use these with our clients. If you are managing a team right now, highly recommend you write these down. What we found in our research is that teams need the following 5 things. Number 1, teams need to believe that their work is important. And by team here, I mean every individual needs to believe their work is important. And yourself as a manager or a team lead, that you got to know what you're doing is important and believe it. Number 2, teams need to feel that their work is personally meaningful. So if it's meaningful for me in a different way than it is for one of my business partners or one of my team members at Talent Catalyst, that's okay. Just needs to be meaningful to me. And that's really closely linked to what motivates me, what drives me. So one of my top motivators is actually family. And I live across the country from my immediate family. And so what's interesting is just knowing that I can connect with them, and knowing that what I'm doing builds stronger families is personally meaningful to me. Number 3, teams need to have clear goals and defined roles. I'll say that one more time. Teams need to have clear goals and defined roles. The clearer the goal, the more clearly defined the role, the more success individuals will have. It doesn't matter what generation they come from. It doesn't matter what industry they're in. The more they can develop clear expectations, their odds of performing higher increase, because they don't have to rely on assumptions. Assumptions are just really, really faulty. Most of the time they're inaccurate and we get in trouble with them. Number 4, teams need to know that they can depend on each other. And in our workshops, often people will say, oh yeah, teams need to know like that I, as their manager, that I have their back. That's another way to think of it. Do you have your team's back? And if you do they know that? Do they trust it, right? Do they have your back? And number 5, teams need to feel psychologically safe. Psychological safety is really directly correlated to trust. Does your team trust one another? Right? And trust is the currency of today. Trust is the commodity of your teams. It's the currency of your teams. Have you developed trust? And the interesting thing about trust is that we build or we behave our way in and out of it. That's one of my favorite quotes from Stephen M.R. Covey. In Talent Catalyst, we use that. Trust is built one behavior at a time. So what behaviors do you need as a leader, specifically to you, to know, oh, I trust my team? And what does your individual team members need to know to trust you? What is it? Is it about honesty? Is it about talking straight? Is it about delivering to deadline? Is it about being on time, delivering results? What is it about, right? So that's key to psychological safety. So the shift here that we're making in the Saturday Night Live case does this beautifully. It's a shift from ego, from me, to community. So the unique thing about Saturday Night Live is that they built this fabulous community, this tight-knit community, but it was amongst actors and comedians. So all of those players had to drop their egos at the door, which is not easy for individual comedians to do, but they did it. They pulled it off and they really unified as a result of it. Okay. I'm going to go back really quickly to the gift. Before we go to tip number 3, because it leads into it. Like I said, nothing for sale, but we do have a cool gift for you. And the gift is this. This is going to lead into our next tip, which is all about coaching. We'd like to offer you as viewers on this webinar and registrants here, one free 20-minute custom coaching session on how to do what we just talked about. How do you gather motivation data? Like, how do you get that? Or how do you build team norms? Like, it's nice in theory, but what's the how? Like, how do I structure that? Maybe some of you are thinking, well, I kind of have them, but I don't know if I have them. What does that exactly look like? So for those of you here, this is about, like, I guess if we quantify this would be about a $350 value, 20 minutes of coaching time to talk specifically about what your business challenge is. So as I go into the next tip, give that thought. Give that thought into what type of conversation would be helpful, what how-to would be helpful. All right. Okay, so 3rd tip, coach like your life depends on it. And here's what we mean by that. Your life really does depend on it. Coaching in our world is a conversation. It's nothing more than a conversation. At Talent Catalyst, that's what we say. And with our clients, we just ask, how are your conversations working? They're either working for us or they're working against us. So that's a question for participants here as well. How are your conversations going? And speaking of conversations, what type of conversations are you struggling with the most? What's hard? I'm going to show you 2 columns here on this next slide of conversations that most clients come to us with, that they're struggling with. And I'll put them up so you can read them, and then we'll talk. Dress code is my favorite one here. Dress code. So if you're dealing with that, we can talk about it. But conversations, they're conversations, if they all worked all the time, we probably wouldn't be on this webinar at all, right? And we wouldn't have written it. Career development conversations can be difficult. They can be easy or difficult. Feedback can be easy or difficult. Shifts in culture. We hear a lot about setting expectations. We hear a lot about performance conversations, performance reviews, especially as it's year end. What do we do? How do we handle those? We didn't learn this in college. No one really trained some of us on how to have these. Is there a formula? Is there a way to make it easier? Other ones we talk about is just building connection with our team. We've had clients call about how do I motivate my team, and then some more HR related conversations, laying off, compensation, all these things. But if you're looking at this list resonating with one of these conversations, you're not alone, because these are what clients have come to us with. And the question is why? Why are these, some of these should be easy, right? Or we assume that people are going to get it, but they don't get it. So we have to have one of these conversations. And why is it hard? And we found that there are two main reasons in our research why these are hard. Number one is time. You know, if it's not on fire or really burning us, do we make the time to have them? Because our assumption generally tends to be it's going to take a lot of time. And I'm a new manager. I'm in over my head. I don't have a lot of time. The second reason why is I don't know how. I've never done this before. No one really trained me. I'll give it the good old college try. I'll go for it from my gut, but like, where am I going to land? You know, and that's that can be problematic. So the bottom line is that conversations of any kind, no matter how long you've been managing, they require a risk. You have new team members all the time. Humans are dynamic. Some days it's great with a team member. Some days it's not with the exact same team member. So these conversations do require risk, and nobody wakes up on Monday going, I can't wait to fail today. That sounds fantastic. I love being a manager, right? Oftentimes these conversations on the emoticon effect are a little bit farther over in survival mode, which is bordering I can't even. So the bottom line here is to look at what's it costing us to not take this risk. And we've asked our clients that. Why are you calling now, right? Why is this so critical now? And they'll bring the risks and the cost of the risk to us. So one reason why is time. I'm out of time. Like, I've got to make a decision with a certain employee, or our team has to deliver a result by the end of this quarter, and we need to make the magic happen. Another cost is remote work access. A lot of my team wants to work from home, or they want to work from home 1 day a week or 2 days a week, or I can't grant them that unless I know how their performance is going. Like, I need to have that conversation and give them some feedback. Another one is compensation. This person wants a promotion, or they want to be paid more, or they want a higher title. How do I talk about that? Another one is managing a larger team. I really want the opportunity to manage a larger team. And if I don't get this conversation right, I don't think I'll be considered for that opportunity. Same thing with a leadership position. I want, like Caroline's example at Citibank, I want to be in a leadership position, but there was a communication gap or an expectation gap, and the conversations weren't being had until that new manager showed up. Credibility. Sometimes when we don't have these conversations, the assumption gets made, it's not in our favor, and we lose credibility. Another client has talked to us about international opportunities. They've been really going for, in a large enterprise, they really want to go to Asia. And that hasn't been granted to them because of the conversation. In other cases, it was because they had the conversation. Other cost is authority. Another cost can be the opportunity to get promoted. And last but not least, we've seen examples where not having the conversations at the right time or in a way that's effective can cost folks their jobs. And that's nothing that a manager ever wants to deal with, especially a new one. And so we say, coach like your life depends on it. This is our coaching methodology called Thrive, and it's a 3-part conversation. And the first part of the conversation is all about aligning our expectations so that we can close that gap. The second part of the conversation is checking in on the progress of the agreement in the aligned conversation. And the third part of the conversation is more akin to a performance-related conversation. It's an opportunity to evaluate or develop our performance. And that's what that's about. But it's important to align expectations at the beginning rather than just assume it's how it's going to go. It sets the trajectory for the rest of a person's performance. So the tip here is to really ask yourself, what kind of conversations am I having and how are they going? And what we found is the key to making them work is focusing them on expectations. And so the shift is moving from distracted or unfocused to focused. What is our intention in our conversation? What do we want to get out of it? And we have this same focus on whether it's a 3-minute conversation, a 30-minute conversation, or an hour-long conversation, is what's in it for that other person to speak with us, and what's in it for us to speak with them, and how can we provide value? Okay, so those are our 3 tips for Thriveval, right? Gather motivation data about our individual team members, really figure out, coach like your life depends on it, and unify up front, build team norms. So with that said, we're going to leave you with the growth challenge on today's webinar. I hope you are feeling as flexible and up for it as this cat down here. This week, and I realize it's a Thursday, so if you want to take this on next week, you can take it on next week. But this week, number one, identify one member of your team and encourage them to speak up 2 times this week. And you all on the webinar, you know who this person is or these people are. Maybe it's you. But encourage them. Look for opportunities where they can speak up this week. Number 2, allow yourself to make one mistake this week and tell a direct report what you learned from it. One mistake and tell a direct report. And you'd be amazing. You'd be amazed at what that conversation can do in terms of building trust and connection. And number 3, when someone asks you for help this week, practice actively listening to him or her. When we say actively listening at Talent Catalyst, we mean listening to what the person has to say and then repeating it back to them to confirm that you really got it, that you really understood. So do that with one person this week and see how it goes. And all 3 of these challenges are designed. They're simple. They're pretty straightforward. Some feel that they're very easy. Some feel that they're not. It's up to you. But they're designed to move you on that Emoticon scale from survive over to thrive and to have you stay there more often than not. And last but not least, we'll end the webinar with a quote from Brené Brown. She's a licensed social worker. She's a professor at the University of Houston, and she's brilliant at building teams, which is what you're all doing. She said, we're going to need to intentionally be with people who are different from us. We're going to have to sign up, join, and take a seat at the table. We're going to have to learn how to listen, have hard conversations, look for joy, share pain, and be more curious than defensive, all while seeking moments of togetherness. And your role as a manager is really an opportunity. It's an opportunity to lead, and an opportunity to build togetherness on a team. And when that happens, the trust radiates, and doing work and making work is a no-brainer. It's an automatic once that trust is there and once that togetherness is built. So to conclude the webinar, we're curious what we can help you with. How can we help you thrive? Is it in the motivation camp? Is it around building team norms? Is it around coaching? How can we help you thrive? And so we are happy to talk with you about assessments if you really want to dig into what motivates or engages your people. If you want to have a conversation about any of this, we can do that. We do courses, we do workshops, we do keynotes. We also coach. We coach one-on-one, and we do team coaching as well. So the gift is yours, one free 20-minute custom coaching session on your business. And what clients traditionally have come to us with is how do I do this? How do I do that? I liked what you talked about, but how do I do it? And so I know it's year end, it's 2018. So if you're having conversations internally about career development or about performance reviews, a process around performance, goal setting, feedback, building team norms, or gathering data, like want to talk about an assessment. And usually folks use this assessment data around promotions, around lateral moves, around identifying high potentials, building strong project teams, developing a recruiting strategy. Any of this kind of information is the conversation that we're used to having. And so we offer that to you. We hope this webinar has provided value, and we look forward to engaging with you in the future. And on behalf of Talent Catalyst, have a wonderful Thursday, and thanks for being here. Feel free to type in any questions in the chat box, and if you wouldn't mind staying on a minute after and giving us feedback on how this experience was for you from a webinar standpoint, we are always looking to provide a better one. So thanks again for being with us, and we will be online. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.